everybody. Happy February 12th. I know some of you are looking around like, oh yeah, there was a reason that we're here. And it's not to chat with my friend that's sitting next to me. It's also because of something going on up there in my living room. We're in a living room today. I didn't want to take you out in the cold. You know, I figured we'll tuck in and stay a little bit warm today. Happy February 12th, everybody. Happy 2020, another welcome to 2020. We're going to keep this going all the way through the entire decade. Welcome to this decade. It's nice to see everybody, and thank you, Debbie, for the beautiful flowers.
You're welcome.
Yeah, they're so pretty. I'm getting a lot of compliments on them. So thank you. They're so pretty. I appreciate it. Yeah, so I just put the official word out there that I do accept gifts. In case there was any ambiguity. All right. I see that there are a lot of people here that were in Grenada on our Welcome to 2020 trip. So it's nice to have a mini reunion here. And there's quite a few of you, which is kind of cool. We're having our first official or unofficial reunion. And that's nice. So we're all bringing back that energy. And in anyone I have spoken to from that had been on the trip, I haven't seen anyone come down yet. It's almost like that whatever we got infused with while we were there, it's still just, it's become a part of us. Like I feel something different. But I'm saying that not to make anyone that wasn't there feel left out or envious. Why I'm saying it is because one of the most expansive feelings that we got while we were there was this feeling of inclusiveness. And we felt like we were there, we were having the experience, but we really just had this magnificent feeling of incorporating all of the people that we know and all of the people that have the same goals as us to become more connected, more happy, more feeling abundant in all the areas of our life. And we just really did feel like we weren't exclusive, but we really did feel like wherever we go and while we were there, that we're just sharing all of this. And it was a very unique feeling because I've been on other kinds of experiences and I've given tons of destination seminars before, but this one really did feel different, like it radiated out from the inside. And it had such a beautiful effect on everyone that was there, but I just feel like it had a beautiful effect just kind of like in the world, putting good energy into the world. So somehow, some way you were there, whether you were not there presently or not. So that was a good feeling. I'm going to try to make you more comfortable over here.
Okay.
Clearly, we're going to try something a little different there. Is that better?
Oh, perfect.
Yeah, that's better. Okay, good. One of the things that I always get at the beginning of every year is a word for the year. And since I did get the word for the year there, I'll share it with you guys while we're here. But I want to say something that was kind of funny, that even though I had gotten the word early on when we arrived, there were plans that I had in place for the trip that changed. And then the plan changed. And then the change to the change changed. And there was one moment when I counted the incarnations of change and we were on number 8. Number 8. And it did get to the point, everyone had a great sense of humor about it. And no one felt the need to control. They all did, try to help, which I thought was overwhelmingly wonderful and awesome. But we all giggled through it. We just made do. We like, all right, well, you stand on my shoulders and I'll stand on yours. And then we can reach that coconut because you are clearly trying to starve us because there doesn't seem to be any food on this island. Am I right? Word to the wise, sometimes it will take 1.5 hours to get the piece of bread that you ordered, okay? That's if you're lucky enough to find someone to order a piece of bread from. But besides that, so early on, I just to joke about what we were experiencing. I said that the word of the year is going to be clearly flexibility. And then when I watched how everything unfolded and how like jovial everybody was, and nobody got cantankerous, and nobody was blaming, and nobody was uptight or yelling, or nobody lost it. Nobody, everybody was so calm and helpful and funny and joking. And it was one of the most soulful things I've ever experienced in my entire life. So I realized that part of why we had such an incredible experience together was because flexibility is not something that we can set our sights on to achieve. It's something that happens. It emerges as a byproduct of enlightenment. You actually start to feel less need to control all of your circumstances, because a consequence of enlightenment is living in trust, or having some faith, or living in some surrender. And what I recognized quickly is that everybody that was there was at a place of soulfulness enough that they didn't need to step right in and get control over everything and pull out their clipboards and their watches and start making phone calls, because we had trust. We had trust in each other. We had trust in the process. We had trust that everything was going to work out, even if it was the 8th incarnation of the first change. So I'm going to add flexibility into the words of the year, not as something to set your sights on, but as something for you to witness within yourself, your own flexibility, as a way to take ownership of the fact that you've come far, that you already are in a state of being that's probably ahead of where a lot of people are living. I understand the need to control things, because I definitely lived like that for the first decades of my life. And I know there's a very clear relationship between becoming an adult that has to control their circumstances and having a childhood that was not predictable, not secure, not pleasant. So when you live in some forms of chaos when you're younger, it makes sense that as you get older, to avoid the sense of not knowing what's coming next, you want to step in and have more control over what's going on. But it's just another form of not living soulfully if you get so connected to your plan that you're trying to control that you become inflexible and immobile when things do change. So it's interesting, when I was younger, before all of these changes, if I were needing to control everything, when something didn't work out the way that I had planned it or wanted it, I would feel a lot of emotion, like a lot, like, anger, disappointment, sadness, invisibility, whatever emotion I was feeling, I'd feel a lot of it. And I look back on that now, and I wasn't really emoting about the change. I was emoting and diffusing all the stuff from childhood that I never had anywhere to put. So what's interesting is that when you do experience new senses of loving yourself, or wonder for the world that you live in, or the possibility that your life is going to improve on an increasing level, when you actually start to bring all that back in and you excavate yourself from all of the challenges that you had, you start to not need that sense of control over all the details. When you get a little bit older, you start to trust, you start to see that, sometimes things actually do work out. And then you start paying attention to where they worked out instead of only paying attention to where they didn't work out. I honestly think that there were times in my life where at the end of the day, I would run through a list of all the things that weren't going well. Well, what am I doing? I'm reinforcing that things don't go well. I'm attracting in more things not going well. And I'm almost predicting my own future not to go well because I put so much energy into it. But when you start to process through your childhood challenges, and you start to get back to the understanding that you really do have the birthright to complete happiness, and anything that took you away from that had nothing to do with you. It had everything to do with everybody else. And you start to live in the belief that you can create happiness regardless of anything that you've experienced up until that moment. And you do start to find yourself being more flexible, less connected to having to have things go a certain way. And then have us all positively influence each other in Grenada so beautifully, where it almost like swept over the whole crowd. You would think if there's 40 people, there'd be 2 or 3 standouts that dug in their heels or stood on a chair and yelled or something. There was not one. It was just someone would make another joke, or someone would hand someone a bag at the back of the bus when they were throwing up coming down from the big hike in the rainforest, right? And that's flexibility. That's flexibility. So in addition, I will give you the word of the year, but in addition to the word of the year, what I would like you to do for your own sake is to pat yourself on the back every time you witness a moment of flexibility in your own life. Because what you're witnessing is you're witnessing your own growth. You're witnessing how far you've come. You're witnessing that not needing to be in control of everything actually is the byproduct of that growth. And not needing to be in control of everything actually puts you in such the driver's seat of power. Because when you don't feel the need to control, and you put your happy thoughts and your vision and your imagination in a carefree way to what you want or how you would like life to be, it starts to come into you because there's no resistance of you needing to control every little detail. So how odd is it that when you let go of control, more of what you really want in your heart can make its way to you? Right? It's amazing. It really is amazing. Even if that thing that you want so deep down is just a piece of bread. The word of the year, though, that came, and it's more almost the year, it's not just the word of the year, I'm sorry, it's the word of the decade. And the word is expansion. We live in an ever-expanding universe. We're all very clear about that. We've heard something about quantum physics at some point or another. Everything is always expanding. But this is an expansive decade. Whatever we put into the waters of humanity and the waters of our earthly existence now are going to expand. So we want to be clear this year about what we are putting out there. We want to be more conscious of what we're putting out there. Because whatever you put out there, even though it would create ripples in the last decade and the decade before and the decade before, there is a new, more powerfully potent, more visible, more tangible energy that's going to help those waves move farther. Okay? And if you are living where you're haphazardly dropping stuff into the waters of humanity that don't feel good to you, those will also expand, not just for you, but for others as well. So if you stay connected to how you want to be and how you want to live and what choices you want to make, all of that is going to grow more so than it has ever grown before. I know there were so many things that happened in my first couple of years of communicating with non-physical souls, and they were not always intentional on my part. Like I didn't think, oh, this is what I want to do and I'm going to do it. But I would just witness my own changes and witness my own behaviors. And some of them were fascinating to witness. Like I'll give you an example. I would be in a store, like let's say like a clothing store like Macy's or something. And the former me, before I began to expand, the former me would be like, watch somebody knock something off, off a rack, and I'd be immediately judgy, because if the person walked away, I'd be like, oh my God, I can't believe it. Just pick up what you didn't you see it. I know you heard it, even if you didn't see it. My head would go through this whole dialogue of, really, what'd you do? You knocked a shirt off a rack. But I would really I'd have you pretty low on the totem pole of humanity, right? So after I started to expand, I found myself like actually not judging. And I started to feel more accepting. Like, well, wherever that person is living, for whatever reason in this moment in their life, they need to feel like the paid employee at Macy's has their job. I can drop something, but it's not my responsibility to pick it up because that person gets paid and they have to take care of me and I shop here and this is my privilege. But whatever makes them feel like that and just leave the thing on the floor, that's where they're living right now. And if that gave them a sense of feeling a little bit more important or a little more special or a little bit more powerful just for that second, then that's where they're living. Who am I to judge that that's where they're living? I think it's a little bit sad because I don't want to use external gratification constantly every few minutes to feel like I'm important, right? I'd rather know I'm important and not knock something off a rack for someone else who's paid to come and pick up and put back on for me just to make me feel like I am special because I'm shopping here. That seems really tedious. Then I found myself accidentally, I was picking the stuff up and putting it back on the rack, you know? And to show you how miraculous this was, not only was I picking it up and putting it back on the rack, but I wasn't glaring at the person who dropped it. I wasn't staring them down with lasers in their back as they walked away. And I reach over and I pick it up and I make sure the hanger rattles and then I put it down. Because that changes the world. That's when people wake up. You know, that's when they say, oh my, I realized I was being rude and that was inconsiderate of me. And how look at this nice woman who came and picked that up for me. I feel better. I'm going to be a better person. I'm not going to yell at my kids. We all feel good, right? So I was actually picking it up and putting it on the rack, not judging, but I felt like I'm standing right here. Why should I step over it and wait till the paid employee comes back at the end of the day and then picks it up? I'm standing right here. Let me just pick it up. It'll get less wrinkles. It'll be more saleable. The world is a better place. It just felt right, right? It's an interesting way to look at your choices, the things that you do. You know, I once in a while I do a little bit more. I don't mind it, but once in a while I'll like put stuff in a different bin in the store. Then I do remind myself that they actually do have people that pay to do this. And there are other things I could be doing with my time, but I don't mind doing a little bit. It makes me feel good. It makes me feel purposeful. It makes me feel like I'm actually just making things a little bit better wherever I am. Now, of course, there's going to be times when I don't have time to do any of that, and that's fine also. I'm certainly not going to feel guilty about it, nor am I going to define myself by the times that I do it and continue to feel the need to do it so I can feel good about myself either. It's just a matter of how do I want to walk through this world? That's all it is how do I want to walk through this world? You know, do you ever see someone who the person in front of them doesn't hold the door open, right? And then you see the person who didn't get the door held open. All right, well, you really would think they just stole their firstborn, because the person that didn't hold the door open is that same person that dropped the thing off the rack in Macy's and didn't put it back up. Like they're like the lowest of low. Like, see, it's Americans, it's this country, you know, people suck, you know, and they're so outraged because someone didn't hold the door open. But let's think this through. Maybe they were having a bad day. Maybe they're shy. Maybe they don't want any attention. Maybe their hands were full and you didn't see it. Maybe they just didn't even notice you. Maybe they are a little bit rude, but they're probably not the scum of the earth rude. But there might be another explanation for it. But what I find so interesting is most people open doors for me. So what does that say? That means I'm opening the doors for myself because I'm living in a vibration where I'm encountering people who somehow notice me, somehow have empty hands, somehow take the time to stop and open the door. Because that's the vibration I live in. The person who had the door slammed on them, they're living in a vibration of contention, of wanting to find evidence that people are unkind, of wanting to see people as mean, of wanting to blow off some steam and get mad at that person instead of getting mad at their father, right? So it's really fascinating when you see what expansion means. I know I've said this before, and I'm going to continue to say it. I sometimes live in this beautiful, glistening castle, and I look at humanity and I watch your struggles. And there are a lot. There are a lot of struggles. Humanity has a lot of struggles. But my vibration has created such a difference in my life that people who come into me are really lovely. They're nice, they're friendly, they're kind, they're helpful, they smile. I might meet one or two here or there that aren't, but I don't generally have direct contact with them. But if you look back and you look at the first decades of my life, that was my whole view of humanity, is the people that were not helpful, the people that were not smiling, the people that were not holding doors, the people that were cutting each other off or stealing the parking spot right when you were about to pull into it. So if the world hasn't changed all that much in the last 10 years, then the common denominator is me. It means when I changed, the world and how it affects me and who I magnetize into me has changed, right? Years ago, I used to say this, Michelle, right? I used to say, when you come in the door here on the second Wednesday of the month, there's like this machine up over the door. And when you walk through that door, it takes all of your human stuff off. And you come in as a soul. When we're in this room, we are our souls. We are the best of ourselves. You can trust everybody in here because you know they have your back. And it's true, right? And then I say, after we spend a couple hours together, when you leave later, feel free to pick your human stuff up again when you walk back out and go to the car. It's up to you. It's right there. It's in a pile. Pick it up. You can take it. I don't care, right? It's just going to sit there if you don't take it home. I don't care. But it's a choice. When you get to find people that are living the way you want the world to be, stick with them, because that becomes the vibration of who you are. You find yourself looking through the lens of kindness. You look through the lens of people are opening the door for each other everywhere. And that becomes a way of being. And the other thing is I balance that off, as I'm sure many of you do in this room, by not subjecting myself to the hostilities of what's happening in the world around us. I don't watch the news. I'm updated. If you live and breathe, you are updated. You get the pieces of what you need to know, and you get it in short enough snippets that you don't need to be immersed in any gruesome details. But you get enough to be aware. As long as you breathe, you know. So I don't look at the news. I don't read the news. I don't read terrible stories. I don't read things that make me angry. I remember in 8th grade, I had an 8th grade social studies teacher. I loved him, absolutely loved him. He was the first person that ever taught us about the importance of current events. And every day we would have to come in, every single day we'd have to come in with an article from the newspaper. And if he called on you the next day, you had to give a 1-sentence summary of whatever your article was. And so that 1 year of 8th grade, I was reading the newspaper every day, but I was in 8th grade. So I did it the way an 8th grader would do. I wouldn't read page 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6, but I go back to page like 13 and it said, you know, boy hit by baseball while helping his sister ride her bicycle. So I'd have these little tiny articles, usually Humanity Interest or something like that. So I still wasn't getting any bad news. But I look back on that and I realize we're conditioned to believe that to be a good citizen of the globe, you have to stay immersed in current affairs and you have to be on top of the news because that makes you a good citizen. But let me tell you something. If you are an angry person, you're a terrible citizen. So I don't agree that you have to immerse yourself in all of the turmoil going on. I'm going to guarantee that if we took you and put you outside in nature and we pointed out birds and I showed you things and I showed you leaves, who here knows what's so magical about a sassafras tree?
It smells really good when you rub it.
Yes, doesn't it?
Yeah. Is that the only thing though?
No, there's more. There's more. There used to be, does anybody else know? What's magical about a sassafras tree?
Can you eat it?
The root of the sassafras tree is where we get sarsaparilla, which is the sweetener or the additive for what, I don't think they make it anymore, sarsaparilla soda.
Right.
But if you concentrate it enough, you can get it to taste like root beer, but a little tiny bit more with like a little bit of a berry flavor to it. So that's the first thing, is grinding the root, you can make soda. But the second thing is that the sassafras tree has 3 unique leaf shapes. And they're absolutely amazing when you look at it. One is this shape, comes to a point at the end. The second one is a mitten. And the third one is a 2-sided mitten. And so it's so cool to find a sassafras tree, because there are a lot on Long Island, and identify the tree by the 3 mittens, right? Now, I've just told you the story. When spring comes and the trees get leaves on them, I guarantee you're all going to be hunting for a sassafras tree, right? And I'm going to tell you that your blood pressure is going to be a lot lower than if you were sitting in front of the news. Am I right? So I guarantee if we take your blood pressure while looking for a sassafras tree versus take your blood pressure while you're sitting there in hour number 2 in front of the news, they're going to read differently, aren't they? Because your body is trying to reject something that's foreign and toxic. That's why your blood pressure is going up. If you're angry, it's because your body is trying to tell you to move away from something that's not good for you, right? I am never angry at a sassafras tree, ever, 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 ever. Not last summer, but the summer before, I had to take one sassafras tree down so another one could grow a little bit bigger. And I took the sapling out with my son, and we had a good size root. So he and we ground down the root, and we added some sugar. And then I said, oh, well, what if we add plain seltzer to that? We really should get sarsaparilla soda. Experiment of the day. And I'm going to tell you, it doesn't work that way because it didn't taste good. But we tried, and we had a great time, and our blood pressure was low. I just realized it needed more bubbles. So those soda machines, right? If we had one of those and we pushed that into the juice of the sassafras tree and added sugar, and then it probably would have tasted really good. Yeah, we did. Yeah, we cooked it also. Cooked it down. Yeah, we did both. We grated it and then cooked it. Yeah, yeah. But it was fun. Like, I think that's more fun than watching the news. And I can always find things to do like that. And then what happens is, after we make a poor attempt at making sarsaparilla soda, then we go into the world and everybody opens the doors for us because we're not angry. Right? So we don't need to invite anyone in that tells us that the world is a terrible place. We only invite people in that show us that the world is really kind. The world is really nice. Make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So expansion is if you recognize that what you put out there is going to grow and it's going to get bigger, then be more clear about what you put out there this year. Be more clear about what you put out there. Give space to people to grow. Give space to people to be their best selves. Put a smile on your face. Have a kind word. When I started to experience my own expansion, I went through a period where any kid I had in middle school at the time, you know, we'd get in the car after we were wherever we were, and he'd be like, "Mom, why do you have to talk to everybody?" Sorry, but that's just who I am. And that's when I usually would say, "You chose me." What else am I going to say? I'm going to tell them something, put it back on them. I'm not taking responsibility. But it's interesting because your life does really reflect where you focus. It really does reflect what you want. It really does give back to you what you want. And if you want the world to be a certain kind of way, then don't show up in that world with anger and expect it to be the world you want to live in. Show up in that world the way you want the world to be and let the world step up to you. Right? Give it a place to go. Nothing is ever won through a fight. Because when you fight, there are two losers. You can't win anything through a fight. Just keep your eye on where you want to be and keep heading there, and other people will follow you. They might not understand you. They might talk about you behind your back, but it really doesn't matter because you're the one that people are opening doors for, right? Let them talk about me. Let them. Maybe they'll be inspired when they're talking and they see what ease I live with. You never know. But I'm not going to apologize for being happy or kind or nice. I'm not going to apologize for it. I'm not going to apologize for not caring about the news. I'm not going to apologize for not being mean or gossipy. I'm not. I think we can set a good example and we can expand that. I do know that this decade that we're living in it's a game changer. And the game changer is that what we have as the possibility of being above the line of negativity is going to continue to expand to the point that it's greater than what we have below the line. But we can accelerate that process and not sit and wait for it by being more of what we want the world to be. So we can't just sit back and say, oh, well, 2020 is supposed to bring more goodness. And 2020 is when things are going to get more into harmony. Or this is the decade of, people becoming more enlightened. And we can't just sit there and complain that it's not there. We have to be it. We got to be out there being it. If you're aware, then lead the front. Be in front. Being in front. Be the model. The analogy, I've given you guys this analogy before, but it's a word. I like visuals because it helps you sink your teeth into a concept. But when I really knowingly could connect with guides and get information that I found to be more valuable than anything I'd heard on earth, and I would still listen and listen and listen to this instead of that, I found myself being the one that was like cutting through old stuff. I was the one where maybe it was a little harder to get to the next step because I was pushing a new edge and pushing a new edge. But it's exactly like a plane. When a plane is flying, there's a ton of air resistance, and the nose of that plane and then the shape of the wings, it cuts through the air. And we know that there's a pocket behind the plane where the next flyer, whoever that might be, doesn't have to use nearly as much jet fuel because they're in your space where you already cut through the air resistance. It's why planes fly in formation. It's to help cut down on fuel. They cut down on a lot of fuel by being pulled in that drag, okay? Now, what if the lead plane, what if it turns around to see how everybody behind it is doing, what happens? It's a 10-plane pileup, and we all fall, right? So I don't look behind me. I just keep moving and moving and moving. I see where I want to be. I see where I want humanity to be. I see what's possible. And I just keep moving there. If some of you drop out from behind that drag, that's okay. Someone else will find you. You'll find your way. It'll work out. But I'm just going to keep moving, because if I turn around and I look back, we all fall out of the sky. If I sink, that's not good for anybody. I'm just going to keep moving. But I don't have to worry about it, because I don't sink anymore. That's how much I have changed. I don't even sink anymore. I just don't. Those of you in Grenada got to see some tough conditions I had, right? Did I ever sink? I never. I didn't even bat an eye. I knew that there were things that had to get done. I knew how changes had to happen, but I didn't cry or get mad or feel dreary or feel like this was a failure or want to go home or not wait. I can't wait till this is over. I didn't. I actually even found all the changes. I found humor in it. I found ways to make it work. And the fact that I had so many people that were willing to find ways to make it all work just made me feel so reinforced in what I was pretty clear about, is that it's all good. It really is all good. When we go to break in a little while, I gave you a pink piece of paper. The piece of paper is for two things. One, write down a question that you would like me to have the guides answer tonight, and I'll pull some out. And then on the back side, put a star or something on the back side so I know it's not your question. But in my upcoming seminars for this year, write down any topic, 1, 2, or 3 of them, or none, that you'd actually like to hear me talk about. Because any topic that you have on your mind, someone else has it on their mind too. And as you know, all I have to do is open up to a thought or a word or a topic, and I can channel information about it for hours and possibly even days. So depending on how big your topic is, I would really like to see me answer some of the questions that you have throughout the year here, and put some seminars on the books that actually address whatever I see popping up among you. Because there are always trends and there are always waves. And a lot of times people start to feel the same thing or have the same curiosity about the same topic at the same time. So if there's anything that you're interested in, write that on the back of the paper with a star. I did put another seminar on the books today. It will be on April 5th in Colts Neck. And the topic I'm going to be doing there is, I'm going to be doing success with less effort. That'll be our topic. And what I mean by that is success is personally defined. There's no collective idea of what success is. We think there is, but that's false. That's everybody else's ideas. Success for ourselves can only be defined by ourselves. But we're living in a society where we're making an awful lot of work for ourselves and for each other all the time about everything. And that's the opposite of living an enlightened life. So what we're going to talk about in Colts Neck on that day is, how do we create life with less effort? How do we step into the ease of what's really available to us to enjoy our life and enjoy not only setting our goals, but enjoy the achievement of those goals as well. On April 26th, I'm giving a longer workshop in Deer Park. It's a Sunday, and the topic on that day will be UN Improved. That's the name of the topic. And what we're going to be looking at is, we're going to look at the power of positive possibilities on that day. What I recognize is that in the 70s and the 80s and so on, we became very clear about what the power of positive thinking was. But the power of positive thinking, it has a limit. We don't understand the full equation. It's not just what we think. There's a lot more that goes into the creation of our reality than what we think. And part of that is the power of positive possibilities. So You and Improved is going to be about how do we manifest the high quality life that we would really like to achieve. So that will be on the 26th. I just want to make sure that I tell you these because I sometimes forget. The April 26th seminar also will be the day that we reveal the winner of this year's art contest. And the art contest is we're going to create, or we are creating, a world flag, a unity flag. So instead of us only looking in terms of borders and separation, I thought it would be fun to celebrate that we're all one humanity. So find your best crayons or your best Play-Doh and put together something to show your idea of unity and submit your flag. And we will be announcing the winner and maybe even have some giveaways on April 26th. So I hope you can be a part of that. Okay. Anybody have any thoughts or questions right now?
What time is the 4th? What time are you doing that?
In Colts Neck?
Yeah.
I think it's the 5th.
Oh, it's the 5th.
It's a Sunday.
Oh, it's a Sunday. Okay.
Yes. And that is at 1 o'clock. Okay. And then later that night, I'll be having another seminar in Mammoth Beach, which is nearby as well. So if you want to hit 2 spots in one day, there, you get it all. Okay. I don't know what that topic will be yet. I haven't decided that one yet. But that's a Sunday. A lot of people from Long Island go. It's not that bad of a ride on a Sunday, right? Joe, you've gone. Debbie, you've gone, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's not that bad.
I say road trip.
Road trip. Jeannie, you've gone, right? Yeah. It's really not that bad of a ride. So come on down. Grab the Partridge Family bus.
Just don't sit in the back.
Just don't sit in the back.
Or sit next to the guy sitting in the back.
Or sit.
That was me.
Joe was sitting next to the guy in the back of the bus. Joe, were you the guy that handed in the bag?
I was the 5th bag.
You were the 5th bag.
So everybody else had bags. I was taking mine to get ready.
Yeah.
I was sitting in front of him, which I think was worse.
Yes.
Oh! And back then, Karen had really long hair.
So did I.
You hit that one out of the park there, Joe. That was funny. That was very funny. Oh my. And yeah, one of our little missteps, those were supposed to be 2 air-conditioned coach buses. And instead we had 3 broken down little shit boxes with some of the windows open. On the long and windy road that was longer and windier on the way back. How? I don't know, but it was double the length. It was, wasn't it? Was the ride back not longer? It was definitely longer. Oh, that was nutty, but it was fun.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Karen saw a lot.
The best was what Marty said.
Was there even a ride for
There's somebody driving this, have you passed this place?
And someone said, no, have we ever actually really seen a bus driver? No, we have not. No, the best was the field trip on the way back. Let's stop and meet the entire village in the dark. Oh, good times, good times, good times, good times. All right. Now, I know if you're thinking at all tonight, you realize that I said whatever we put into the waters of humanity will expand. So there's always a corollary to putting something good into the waters of humanity, and that corollary is putting something not so good. And it's inevitable that this year, some of the crummy stuff that some crummy people are going to put into the waters of humanity, it's going to expand, because that's how humanity gets the opportunity for discovery and the opportunity to grow. Sometimes we have to be taken away from our level of complacency and drop even lower than that in order to feel motivated to participate in the process of bringing it back to where we believe we would like to live soulfully. It's the process. I don't know why, but that's what happens. One of the wonderful opportunities for discovery, the vehicle we have in our earth existence on this plane, is that our soul makes a lot of discoveries and has a lot of growth and integrates all of this together through accessing things that are negative. When we're not in bodies, there is no negative. So we don't use it as an impetus to change or to re-perceive or to look at something different. As souls without bodies, we are fully expanding all the time. We live in creativity and imagination and abundance and bliss and expansion. In a human experience, the negative aspect of our walk here, it incentivizes us to remember what it felt like when we didn't feel bad or we didn't feel negative. And being separated from the good feelings, it helps us to see things differently potentially. Now, one person can go through decade after decade after decade after life and have opportunities to make discoveries where they can see things differently, but it doesn't necessarily mean they're going to open up the door to those discoveries. So they're going to have more not good stuff happen, and more not good stuff happen, and more not good stuff happen, because they're not understanding that they can open things up and then say, you know what, enough is enough. I'm not doing this anymore. If all of this stuff is happening and I'm the one in the center of all of this, then maybe I am the common denominator here. Not that I deserve any of this, but what am I thinking, feeling, believing, and what actions am I taking to continually have these negative experiences in my life? Maybe I have to change something I'm doing. Maybe I have to look at my expectations. Maybe I have to look at where I'm keeping my own thoughts and my own focus. Maybe I want to start to take ownership of my energy in this equation. But if you are hit, if someone is hit again and again and again, and they're not opening up to the possibility that there may be a new perspective, then they're going to stay within that vibrational range. And it's not until they go lower that they might be ignited with the incentive to really step out of it and say, this is enough. This is enough.
That's a seminar right there of how you can create that. I mean, like, it sounds silly, but it's,
yes,
that is a whole seminar.
And how to create that.
Write another one. You got that seminar, right?
You can write it anyway, because I might not remember it. There's I was going to say something.
Sorry.
That's all right. I was going to say something after that. I don't know what it was.
Physical reality and how each person is, their energy.
Yeah, that too. What was it? All right, I totally lost it. It'll come back. Maybe it won't.
You were saying about how you have to, certain people have to hit a bottom.
Yeah. Okay, so did you ever like have someone unexpectedly die, right? And then you're just like in this zone where everything is surreal. You almost feel like you're in a glass bubble. And you walk in a room and somebody's watching SpongeBob and you're like, oh my God, how can you watch SpongeBob? Like, who made SpongeBob? Why is it funny? Why are you sitting there? Like, you just don't understand anything going on anymore because you're in this space of like suspended animation. You know that spot? What happens a lot of times is when someone is in that space of suspended animation, One of the positive byproducts of that is that you accidentally slip away from your left brain. You slip away from rational thinking, from logic, from analyzing everything, from the fret and the worry and the schedules and the tasks and the constant pressing to get something else done. When you step away and you're pulled way away from your left brain and you're just out there floating in an unknown world, you can accidentally get into your right brain, which is the source of wisdom and freedom and expansive possibility and soulfulness and happiness and joy and bliss. So oftentimes people have their first awakening in a state of grief. It's the first time, huh?
Traumatic experience.
And the reason is because you separated from your left brain. That's when you became porous, open, a possibility that floats by. All of a sudden you grab it when you never would have grabbed it before. So what this looks like is, all right, SpongeBob is freaky at the moment and you can't deal with it, but all of a sudden you're in another spot and somebody says, well, you know, it's always darkest before the dawn. And then somebody else says, well, I think what you focus on will expand. And all of a sudden you're hearing these sentences that you've heard your whole life. And all of a sudden you're like, oh, yes. And you're jotting them down. And you're like, what did you just say? What did you just say? And all of a sudden a billboard that's been there for 20 years of your life, all of a sudden it starts singing to you. It's because all of a sudden you're out of that left brain control freak place and you're back open into possibility of connecting with your soulful wisdom. So sometimes the fall may be horrible in the second, but it does open up the possibility of different approaches, different things to look at, different things to expand into. It doesn't mean it's guaranteed to happen. It just means it makes the space. The universe can't compel you to do anything. The only thing the universe can do for you is to help you make the space to walk into. That's the only thing it can do. It can open a door, but it can't pull you through. And it's going to keep opening and opening and opening and opening and opening doors your whole life. And try to invite you and try to make it alluring and try to make it filled with positive possibilities. But you are the only person that can take the step through that door. You're the only one. You're the only one that can do it. All right, we're going to take a 10-minute break. Grab a friend and chat, because I know I saw you doing that. Write out your 2 pieces of paper and get them back to me, and we will return in 10 minutes. Okay. All right, if you're watching live, just type your question in the chat room and I'll look for it. Okay? We have a big presence online and a big presence of people who will be watching tomorrow as well. That seems to be growing. I'm glad I made it available. But sometimes I miss some of the people that used to come and now they watch from home. But it's all good, right? At least it's still all good. I was glancing through some of the topics that you guys wrote. Thank you for that. I'm really happy to see you put a pen to paper and really write down. There's some really good thoughts there, and that's helpful to me. I don't generally ask for topic ideas, but it was nice. I really appreciate the effort you put into it, and they're really good topics too, really good topics. And I'm going to tell you that I'm going to do my very best at a minimum in our group. I'm going to do my very best to cover these topics. But they're really amazing, really good, excellent, thank you. So I will be getting to these. One topic that I get asked to do a lot is seminars on parenting. Is there anyone in this room that would be interested in parenting seminars here?
I my kids already.
Yeah. That was the reason I was asking. The reason I'm asking. Huh?
It's still parenting.
Yeah. The reason I was asking is because I know that sometimes it's like, well, I've already wrecked mine, but you know, damage control. Damage control. How do I undo the parenting moments of my life? Now, I was just curious because, like I said, it's a fantastic topic. That is the one area of my life that I know I've done intuitively from the beginning, and the results have worked out pretty well. Which I think a good result would be that your kids grow up happy and independent, and if 3 for 3 grow up happy and independent, then I think that means that something must have gone right in the parenting department. But one thing I do realize is that the techniques in parenting, they really are basically intuitive techniques for all people, not just for your own children. It's managing people if you have employees, it's managing coworkers, it's being in a relationship, it's your relationship with your family other than your children. A lot of the techniques are very, very similar. And I will tell you that as I kept peeling off my masks and layers and increasing my vibrational energy, I recognize that there is a privilege in being one of the people in the room that has the highest level of awareness. I can't say I ever looked at any skill set I had in my whole life and said I was at the, maybe the top of the room on that skill set. So being able to say that I feel like a lot of times I am that person in the room that has maybe the highest level of awareness, it actually feels good. It doesn't feel lonely, and it's not draining, because what you do is having a higher level of awareness means you're looking through the lens of love, and you're always seeing new possibilities, and you're always seeing ways that something can be reimagined or shifted. And if you could be the one in the room at any given moment, and you can put just a little pop of possibility out there for everybody else, it feels really good when you see people grab it. So it's not, I know in the very beginning when you peel masks and layers off and you get to new levels of happiness and you get to new levels of your own enlightenment, it's lonely at first. I'm not going to tell you that it's not. It's very, very lonely at first. But eventually, not only do you meet more people that are in that same vibration, but you also get to see that it's nice. It's really nice to be able to help in circumstances where people didn't have a different perspective or didn't have a different way of looking at it. But I will do something on parenting, definitely. All right, so I'm going to answer the questions that you had and some of these others. They're good ones. They're really good. A lot about intuition, connecting with my guides. One says how to channel. I've never actually done a class on just how to channel. I think that's kind of an interesting thing to talk about. And so I will do some of them here as well. And I'll even put a topic right in my newsletter and right on my website when I figure out what I want to primarily focus on for the following month, okay? And that'll be helpful too, so you know that, oh, that sounds like a really good topic. I'd like to learn more about that. So let's look at the questions for this evening. And I did tell people at home to type their questions in, so I also want to take a peek at those, but I don't know how to scroll. So I'll have to figure that out. I'll figure it out at some point before I leave. Okay. All right, the first one is, a lot of these questions are kind of broad and applicable to everybody, but there are a couple of questions in here where someone is asking something specific for them. So I'll just keep mixing all of them in. The first one is, when will I get the break I need to break out of the rut I'm currently in? Okay, I'm going to give you two angles on this, and I'm also going to say that the answer I give will be generic for everybody, but then also specific for you. But first of all, this is an analogy that I talk about, and when you're thinking in terms of enlightenment or meeting goals or moving forward, it's a really good analogy because it helps you understand the process. And the analogy is that when babies are small, they eat and eat and eat and eat and eat nonstop, right? And then all of a sudden they have like a little belly. And then they like sleep and sleep and sleep and sleep and sleep. And then all of a sudden you reach down in their crib on like day 5 after this process, and they're They're like little human beings, like they're not babies anymore. And what happened was they put their fuel in, they grabbed and they grabbed and they grabbed and they held on to it. And then they paused and they let all that stuff that they had just picked up, let it rest, let it simmer, let it do its stuff, let it move around the body. And then they grew. So we don't actually grow like this. We grow like this. And one thing you got to do is stop fighting the pauses. Give yourself permission to digest that which it is you have just been grabbing from all around you. You cannot stay on a perpetual journey of seeking and expect to grow. You have to give yourself a break. You got to pause. You got to maybe even once in a while feel like you're in a rut. It's emptying the space for all of that new information to take hold. If you're constantly pressing and pressing and pressing and pressing and pressing to get farther, to know more, to be more enlightened, to improve, to grow, to get happy, I'm fighting to be happy. If you're constantly in that mode, you're never going to be able to just settle into and digest and live and think about and absorb that which it is you have already sought. So sometimes a rut is a good thing, because when you're in a rut, you might stop seeking for a moment enough to let yourself digest and integrate that which it is you've already discovered. The other thing is, we're going to talk about the language in here, is when will I get the break I need? Okay. What that does is if you're seeing the world in terms of when will I get the break I need, what you're seeing yourself is you're seeing yourself in the role of being passive in your life. We're not passive in our life. We create our life. And if you feel as though you are the passive one waiting for something to happen, then it's time to rethink your relationship with your own life and the energy that you're putting into your own life. Okay? So I don't wait for breaks. I think about the next thing that I want to do. I might have, imagined that this would happen, or this would happen, or this would happen, or this would happen. And in the beginning, I might have had an intense desire for all of those happenings to be on my idea of a timeline. But as I became more aware of the process of the universe and energy and vibrations, I recognized that since there really is no such thing as time, we can't force or compel the universe to act on our timeline under any circumstance. Time does not exist. It's an invisible energy. We've manufactured it and we believe in it, but it doesn't mean the universe believes in it, because it doesn't exist. It's invisible. So first of all, forget your timeline. If you have to take an action, you can plan it according to a timeline, and taking the actions according to your timeline is your participation in creating the life that it is that you want. But then you can't compel the results according to your timeline. You have to relax into it and have some trust in the fact that you know what you're thinking and feeling and believing, and the actions that you are taking are aligned with whatever goal it is you want to achieve, whatever that might be. So just take a peek. Am I thinking about things that are positively aligned with that goal? Do I feel that it's possible? Do I feel aligned with the good feelings of achieving that goal? Do I believe that it's possible to achieve that goal? Do I feel worthy of that goal? And then am I taking relevant and inspired action to achieve that goal? Those are the four energies that affect when you get your break. So sometimes it's okay to pause, but don't expect something to come and land on your door if you have not put in those four energies to create that which it is you're professing to want. Okay? A lot of times we think that we're pouring something into a goal and we're pouring it in and we're pouring it in. And it might all seem like it adds up mathematically. Yes, I was thinking. Yes, I was feeling. Yes, I was taking the actions. But where the whole might be, and the whole is a little bit hard to discover because it's not always easy to see, but the whole might be in what you believe. So we got to really think about what we believe, because sometimes those beliefs are unconscious and they can be incongruent with the goal that you're stating or thinking of. So when all else fails and you're sitting here saying, well, I did all those things and now the break's not coming in, so what gives? Now, if all of this is true and you feel that all of those other energies have aligned with where you want to be, now it's time to take a look at your belief system. You didn't create that belief system on your own. The universe has told you things that are false. Humanity is constantly bombarding us with misinformation and misdirecting us about truth and possibility and optimism and freedom. So you might just be holding on to a belief that's not consistent with the goal that it is that you want. And that belief might be, I'm not worthy of a romantic partner that I have a mutually beneficial experience with. Or there's the real reason that maybe I'm not getting any of the promotions that I see other people getting is not because of my skill set, but because I don't really believe I'm worthy of it. My belief might be that if you have more money than you need, you are sinful and you're not generous and you're greedy. So there might be something that you're carrying around that was suggested to you over and over again that's inconsistent with where you believe you would like to be. So the answer is break down that equation, what I think, what I feel, what I believe, and the subsequent actions that I take based on what I think and feel and believe. Break that equation down on where you would like your break and make sure that those energies that go into those 4 components are actually in alignment with the break that it is that you would like. Okay? The last part that I want to say, and this might be specific for the writer, when we say I'm looking for the break, sometimes the break, it has something very, very specific connected to it. And as we well know, one of the principles of enlightenment is to put forth a vision of possibility, but then let that vision free by not being too attached to a specific outcome. Okay? So it sounds kind of odd, but it means that just because you want this doesn't mean that the steps toward getting here are not actually the universe's way of getting you here so it can turn you over here. This might not be the end result after all. So pay attention to the bends in the road as you're taking the steps to get there. And sometimes the bend in the road is going to get you to be in a place that's more aligned with your soul's intention than where you think you really wanted to be. The funniest example of this in my personal life was between 9/11 and 2005, when I actually learned to communicate with the guides that were communicating with me for all of those other years. In that time, I was divesting myself of a lot of my business contracts because they no longer felt like they were aligned with me. And I interviewed with a company that I wanted the job really, really, really badly. And it was to be an editor of a sustainability magazine. It was going to be all about the environment, being eco-friendly, sustainability. It was going to be all about Long Island too. It was going to be art, music, so on and so forth. My dream come true. So I go on the interview, great job. Go on another interview, great job. Down to 2 candidates. 2 candidates. And then I was on vacation and I was away when I get the phone call about whether or not I got the job. And all that they said is, well, you know, we gave it to so-and-so because of this. However, would you please come in on Tuesday so we could talk to you about something else? Now, I was still pretty much living in ego at the time. Ego means just a human experience, not a soulful experience, right? So my ego was like, that sucks. Of course, I don't want to come in. You're an idiot. I never liked you anyway. You suck. That's where I was at. But I was professional and cordial on the phone. And then over the next few days, I adjusted to the fact that I would go and talk to them on Tuesday. So I went in on Tuesday and they sat down and they said, well, the real reason that we chose the other person for the editor role is because your business background, we just really felt like you would be a better business advisor to us than be the editor. And we really could use you in that role instead. So then they told me the money. They told me how hard I would have to work, which was about 1/10 that the editor had to work. And I was like, oh, well, let me think about it. Went into the parking lot and cheered, and then wound up basically having a pretty decent paying job where I never had to show up for it. I did the work, I did it well, but it gave me the freedom to learn how to talk to guides and get paid for it. Do you see what I'm saying? Right? It's quite miraculous.
It's the best of both worlds.
It's quite miraculous. Yes, yes, yes. So now imagine I was not yet open to the changing view of reality that I was going through in those years. And imagine I had said, here's my goal. I want to be the editor of this magazine. And they said no while I'm standing on the stepping stone. Imagine if I had just said, F this, and then stubbornly run away. Nothing ever works out right for me. I never get my break. And what if I did all that, right? And I would have just dropped like a lead ball onto the earth. I would have gone splat. And then I would have had no money, no job, misery, felt beaten up again, thought the universe hated me, would have been crushed. And where would we be? None of us would be here today. None of us would be here tonight, right? Do you follow? So sometimes your big break or your break is not what you think it is. Bless you. Okay. Yeah, I got paid to talk to guides. I still do. I still do. Okay. I like this one. Well, you don't, but I do. You wouldn't have written it if you liked it. Why do I procrastinate so much? This is a really interesting question because there's two levels of an answer. Why do I procrastinate so much? Okay. Number one, on the human level, if we go back to childhood and childhood didn't necessarily support you for who you are. You didn't have the sense that you had the autonomy to choose your own path or to feel the freedom to follow your talents or your passions or your skill or to be independent in your decision making or be self-sufficient or to be valued or appreciated. You will probably come into adulthood wanting to control your circumstances for the lack of control you had when you were a child. So it's sort of like makeup control. I got to make up for where I had no control when I was younger. So when you're in makeup control circumstances, one of the ways that we actually control our circumstances is through procrastination. So if you're not doing what you set yourself out to do, you actually are really in very, very, very much control of what happens, aren't you? You might not realize it, but you are. So by not doing, you are controlling the outcome. You just have to figure out whether or not that's the outcome that you really want or not, because that's the outcome that you are creating. So that's one version of it. Procrastination is a form of control. If you've been too controlled by other people, procrastination is a form of you regaining control of your own life. Okay? Now, there's another aspect of procrastination, which is going to sound completely inconsistent with what I just said. So it's good to understand both versions so you can see how procrastinating is playing out in your own life. But the other version of procrastination is, this is the form I have, where there are some times when I don't answer something I was supposed to answer for an inordinately long amount of time, or I don't do that thing that I said I was going to do. And it's like 1 day, 2 day, 3 day. Now I feel like, wow, I really missed the ball on this one. But then all of a sudden something pops and the problem got solved. The problem itself disappeared, or the solution was in the works and I didn't have to participate in the solution at all. So sometimes procrastinating is you don't really feel pulled to do the thing because there's a sense that it's really just not the right time yet. Okay? And the way I can show you this as an example is this is something that happens to me a lot when I am creating new seminars. So a lot of times, like I know I have to put something on the books, but I'm going through my logical list of the event spaces where I usually speak. And I'm thinking of that one, and I'm thinking of that one, and I'm thinking of that one, and I'm like, oh, I know we got to start calling. I got to book something. It's so late. I got to advertise. I got to get my promotions, and I'm just doing nothing. So now the event is 6 weeks away, and now it's 5 weeks away, and I'm like, I'm screwing myself with my procrastinating. But then all of a sudden, someone bumps into someone, and someone says, oh, I have this place, and then they say, I have this place. Before you know it, it's done. The write-up is done. It's up on the website. There's an add to cart button, and we're done. And all I had to do was bump into that person. So it's really interesting how once in a while your lack of doing something is actually to get you out of the hamster wheel where we're taking action for action's sake, but we're not taking action that actually feels meaningful, purposeful, or right in the moment. And sometimes you just got to pull yourself off of that perpetual action for action's sake and let the universe come in and say, all right, we heard your goal. Let's see what we can do to get a possible path in there for you. So I know that they sound separate, and we probably use a little bit of both. But at least when you're using the one where you're not doing something and then it works out without your participation, at least when you're using that one, cull the benefit, pat yourself on the back, look at how you were intuitive in that moment so that you can encourage your own intuition to grow by seeing the positive result, right? So
my parents tell me that all the time.
Yeah, I've watched people who try to get maybe trying to get a job or something, and they're procrastinating writing back or writing the thank you letter or going on an interview or fixing up their resume. Well, the reason is because you might want the job because you think it has more pay or it has better benefits or it's closer to home. But the truth is, if you keep procrastinating all these details, you really don't want the job. You just don't want it.
Or you don't want those goals that they have for you.
Yes, exactly. Or you don't want the goals that they have for you. Exactly. And even there could be a bit of intuition in there that says, even if I drive myself to take care of all the details that me and the job match up, it might not be a good fit. I might not be the person for this role, or that company might not be the company for me. So procrastination is number one, it's great that you are even aware that you're procrastinating in any particular circumstance, because awareness is the first step toward being able to understand and determine why you are procrastinating in that specific arena. Okay. I do know for me in particular, procrastinating when it comes to some kind of work endeavor, it usually does work out. It usually does work out that something pops up, or the solution comes, or I meet somebody, or something happens. It usually just works out. When I find myself forcing myself into a circumstance to get something done, it's usually my left brain that is saying, do this, do this, do this. This is a good idea. Do this, do this, do this, do this is a good idea. My left brain is not the best guide of what's to come. And for most of us, our left brain doesn't do as good of a job. Logic and analytical reasoning alone, without the intuition and the creativity and imagination and the support from other sources that come from the right brain, doing left brain alone doesn't get most of us to the places that really make our heart sing. Okay? I did lose the question during all this. A couple of people had put questions in and I lost them. So for those of you who are at home, do me a favor. I apologize, but please just type your question in again. You got that one? With the shift that's happening in 2020, I felt incredible changes. How long can I expect this to last? I can feel the shift too. I knew that the shift was coming, and it is here. I don't expect it to ever go away. You know, what I've been saying since the year 2012 is that this is a new era. This is a period in history in which humanity can really, really, really reorganize itself to create happiness, wellness, and prosperity for all. But so many things have to be deconstructed in order for us to construct what we can expect in the new era. But if you're going to be the one that just keeps envisioning where you would like to be and where you would like humanity to be, then you shouldn't drop out of the wonderful new vibrational feelings that you have from 2020. It should be sustainable. You know, I've been giving even destination seminars since probably around, I don't know, 2009 maybe. So 10 years. Is it 10 years, right? So in the beginning, I would give a destination seminar, and I would see that people would really be sustained in that energy for like months and months and months afterward. And then I'd do some a few years later, and then that growth or that expansion or that possibility would last, man, they were still talking about it like 9 months later. But what I am sensing is that the vibration that's changing on Earth with the change in 2020 means that when you start to experience these real shifts now, they're going to carry on forever. They're going to be permanent. They're going to be a part of you. You're walking through doors, and once you're on the other side, there's no turning back. You can't unknow principles of enlightenment that become a part of your being. You cannot unknow something that becomes a part of your being, right? You know, it's so funny when I finally found it. There it is. It's gone. Yay! Okay. And then now there's a question, but now I don't know how to get rid of that. Okay, now I can see. So expect it to continue. It doesn't mean that there won't be times when you revisit former behaviors. Revisiting former behaviors of thought and actions and feelings is common. But when you revisit them, if they don't feel supportive and they don't feel productive and they don't feel good, then you have increasing tools to move yourself past them. Plus, you have a new incentive to get through it because you are now knowing what it's like to touch a new sense of happiness and purpose and freedom. Once you touch those places, it's almost impossible to revert back to the worst of the former energies that you've ever had. You might bounce down a little bit, but you can't go all the way back down. One of the things I find with clients often is that when they're up here and they have a crash or a revisit of former behaviors and they come to here, they're devastated, right? Number one, they feel like all the enlightenment that they experienced was for naught. They're back to square one. They feel like a failure. They feel miserable. But what they're not recognizing is that that drop is relative. Where they used to live is here. They still feel as crummy here now as they used to think they felt here because it's relative. It's still a drop, but you're nowhere near where you used to be. You're nowhere near where you used to be. So always remember that it's relative. You are much, much, much farther along than you were when you started. And when you recognize that and you just remind yourself of that one detail, then you can start to remember how you got there to begin with from here. and tap into the same strategies that you use to get from here to there. They still work. Sometimes you just have to pull them out and do them again. Sometimes it means you need an affirmation. Sometimes it means you use your energy stick. Sometimes it means you use your body to shift your thoughts. Sometimes it means go out in nature. Sometimes it means pull a sassafras sapling and go make some really bad soda. You know, but it means to use the tools. You are not where you used to be. And wherever you are, that's not where you used to be, can never last as long as where you used to be. So this is temporary. This is temporary.
Yay.
Use your tools. Use your tools. And one of those tools is phone a friend, right? Pick a soulful friend and phone them. Don't text them. Phone them. I'm going to try reading a question here. Okay, here's a question. Why do I have anger when my ex moves on, even though I have been emotionally disconnected from him for a very, very long time, but I still feel angry? Kind of funny, right? It's a kind of common thought. But one of the things is that there are milestones in life, and milestones make us contemplate things. They're moments when we pause and we reflect. So a milestone is the turn of the calendar from December 31st to January 1st. That's why we have this whole history of New Year's resolutions and celebrating the new year and bringing in the new energy and having this shared moment. Because a milestone helps us to pause and to contemplate. So at least once a year, perhaps we're going to think about, what would we like next year to be like? How do we want to feel? What would we like to achieve? What do we want this to look like? But at least you're having a conversation with the universe one time a year to say, I'm actually thinking about life instead of life just happening at me and me thinking that I'm along for a ride that I have no voice in. So milestones are very purposeful. But sometimes milestones don't feel like they're purposefully good. They feel like they're purposefully bad, but they're not. When you have a relationship with a person, you enter into a relationship with the expectation that this will be a mutually beneficial circumstance for as far as the mind and the eye can dance. When you are beginning the process of realizing that we're not mutually beneficial, and you go through the process of pulling apart and breaking up or doing whatever it is that you're doing, it comes not only the loss of that other person in your life and your space, but you also begin to bury what you believe was your hope for the future. That you might not have even had a realization of what you expected life to be like decades from now until it comes to this big halt in the middle of it. And in the absence of that path, all of a sudden you realize what you thought life would be like. Okay, so when your ex then begins to quote unquote move on, it's a milestone, and it makes you take pause again to reflect on where you thought you would be, what you thought that relationship would be like, and what you thought might happen in the future. So if you're not where you would have wanted to be, and you think that your ex is where you would have wanted to be, you're going to feel left out. You're going to feel maybe even lonely. You might even be afraid of the unknown. So there comes with that a little feeling of resentment and perhaps a moment to grieve the future that you didn't have that you thought you might have been promised. Okay? So what I say is, when a person moves on from a relationship, number one, we'll always be eternally connected. So what we're doing as human beings has absolutely nothing to do with what we're doing as souls. So it always feels good if you can do the very best you can to let someone go with the possibility of them experiencing happiness. if you were not the right vibrational energy for that person in the moment and vice versa, then that means that there's a person that's more compatible with who you are other than that person in that space. So now you get to see reflected outside of you through your ex that this is a true process. That when we don't have a place card in our life of someone holding an energetic spot, that the person who might be more compatible with who we are in any given moment is now welcome to come in. So use this as a sign that the person who's more compatible with you, where you are vibrating in the moment, is now welcome to come into your space as well. And if there is any grief that you did not grieve at the end of the relationship, use this as a reminder to let go of that imaginary future that you thought you would have, so you can make the space open and available for the bright and vivid future that you actually will have. It's a different one, but it's beautiful. Okay?
That was beautiful.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, I have another one. How do you set goals when you lose the pull to move? Wait, let me read this better. Hold on. Okay, how do you move forward when you lose the pull where you are and you get pulled to go in a new direction? All right, one of the things humanity tells us is that if you can't stick with a plan, that you are inferior, right? Because you're a quitter. You got to stick with it. You got to, grunt it out for the long run. And this is an obvious and meaningful way that we can determine your character and your worthiness. This is what the world tells us our whole lives, is you got to stick with it, right? Now, the first thing people look at on a resume when they get it is your work history to determine how worthy you are for you to be someone in their company. It's actually not true. If I had a 30-year job, shoot me. Sorry. But really, I mean, let it be a lighthearted feather gun, but just get me out of my misery. I can't even imagine not reincarnating myself time and time again when I change and when I shift. It just doesn't lack. I mean, it's just lacking in imagination and soulfulness and staying aligned with my purpose and changing when I change and growing when I grow. I think it's one of the coolest things if somebody has actually found their purpose at a young age, and then they take all the steps and they get that degree and they do that thing, and then they're happy for 30 years or 40 years in that role. I think that's extraordinary, because to be able to discover your passionate purpose at a young age and then get to experience it your whole life without exception, I think that that's miraculous. But it's not me, and it's not a lot of us. Everything changes, everything, how we feel about the artwork hanging in our living room, how we feel about wearing dark green pants, how we feel about politics, how we feel about religion. We're constantly changing, we're constantly expanding, we're constantly getting new ideas, we're constantly expressing ourselves differently. So doesn't it make sense that in our lives where we're focused, we might want to change and shift more so than the world tells us we're supposed to as well? My feeling is that if you are finding that you're changing your focus very frequently after you quote unquote think you got something started and up and running, it might be a good idea to evaluate what your passion is. It might not actually be the task, but it might be about being in a creative role. Maybe you're an ideas person. Maybe you're a visionary. Maybe you want to start to consider how you can get yourself into a role in which that's where you can stay, where things are different, where things are changing, where things are fresh, where things are new. Okay? So first thing is evaluate if you're changing because you like change itself. And secondly, if that's not the case for you in particular, then look at where you're pulled and see if it feels evolutionary. Are you moving from something that was a stepping stone to where you're moving to? Because oftentimes, just like I was saying about the job that I took in that year, a lot of times the path, it may seem like this, but the path is a little bit more bendy than that. And the universe is actually helping you to get to something that's going to fulfill you in a more complete way, simply by putting forth those feelings of you being pulled towards something new. I don't think that humanity is necessarily, in the United States in particular, is necessarily set up for us to be able to follow those pushes and pulls as beautifully and wonderfully as we would like to. Not in this moment, but we do have more power than we think we do. But we tend to get married to familiarity. We might be in a familiar house, a familiar county, a familiar state, a familiar country, with familiar people, with so much familiarity that we've made it almost like an imprisoned state of inability to shift or move. So sometimes if you find yourself pulled to something entirely new, if you think that that world of familiarity can't sustain what you're pulled to, you might have to question everything in order to move toward that thing that it is that's pulling you. It might mean moving. It might mean selling off things. It might mean downsizing. It might mean simplifying. It might mean experimenting in a different way of living your life than you are presently living it. So that's a possibility too. But what I can tell you is that the younger generation, they are going to change the world. And they're going to create a world in which, when you are pulled towards something different, that the universe will support that movement more than it presently does. I don't know exactly how the present construct is going to be deconstructed. I don't need to know all of the details, but I know so many of those things that we have become accustomed to that feel like rules, they're going to break down. And as they break down, the younger generation, and as much as the older generations want to participate, they will rebuild in more soulful ways. There are so many things that we take for granted as being absolutes that they have to, must, need to. One of those, what you could see is why it's not tenable to stay in that kind of a situation would be if you look at the American work environment. You know, the American work environment used to be, corporate America was literally 9 to 5. 9 to 5 Monday through Friday, and you got a decent 45-minute or hour break every day, and that was it. When you went home, you might complain a little, you might worry about a project, but you didn't really do anything about anything until you went back to work at 9 o'clock in the morning. Now, with cell phones and emails and corporate demands and stockholders, people are giving their blood to companies. It's incredibly stressful. The demands are unreasonable, but the bubble has to pop. So in order for us to sustain a continuing future, we have to pop the bubble, which means individuals are going to increasingly stand up and say, you don't own me, to the companies. And people who are in demand, hopefully they'll use their voices to say, I'm available to you anytime you want, as long as it's between 9 and 5, Monday through Friday. And when we start to take that back, then we start to see that we have more flexibility in our choices again. And we start to get back to more freedom. What I find is more and more, when we get to higher and higher levels of awareness, those are the people that break out of the corporate bubble and they go and they do something entrepreneurial, or they become consultants, or they sell their house and move somewhere else and live on the river off of what they made when they were living in corporate America. The reason is because when you get to a certain level of awareness, you no longer feel the need or the desire to live by other people's rules, which are not soulful. So bottom line, The higher your level of awareness, the less you agree to live by somebody else's rules, which are not soulful. I think my worst nightmare right now would be to go back to corporate America. I can't even imagine. I can't imagine doing it for a week. I can't. I wouldn't do it. I couldn't do it for a week. It's just not me. Does that help? Okay, next question. I don't know what time it is. What? Oh, really? When did that happen? Oh, okay. I would have gone on forever.
None of us stopped.
Okay. Yeah, really, I can clearly see that. Why am I procrastinating about telling Karen that it's clearly after 9 o'clock? Anyone? Well, the intuitive answer is. All right, let me do one more because I don't like to just end abruptly, okay? I think I actually answered this one. Is now the right time to make a career change? I clearly just answered that question. Clearly answered that question. Thank you very much.
You answered it first.
I did.
And then asked you.
I did.
Jeopardy.
I did. Yes, I did. I did. All right, this, I'm gonna paraphrase the question. All right, so a lot of people like to know about other energies, like what's a spirit, what's an angel, what's a ghost, what are all of these things? And the best way for me to describe what I know is that I basically have near-death experiences. Meaning I leave the human construct and I return all the way home. But it's not near death because I go all the way back home. I don't.
An OBE, out-of-body experience.
Okay, so I don't snap back. Near death is you go, and then you snap back, right? So if you didn't go all the way, you don't know what's up the rest of that corridor. You only know what's up the corridor as far as you went. So, but I go all the way back home, therefore I know the whole corridor. So I get a good sense of what are energies, what are these experiences that we have. And one of the funniest things I find about humanity is, there's a lot of funny things about us, but one of the funniest things about us, and we can't help it because we're human, but we personify everything. Every single thing we personify, which means we take our lens of perception and we place it into every single solitary thing. A rock, a cat, the water. We take our experiences and we project it out and we decipher and interpret what everything else is going on in the universe based on our perceptions of things. I get a kick out of like reading, oh, cat behavior. Your cat is doing this and this because of such and such. And I'm like, how the fuck do you, how the heck do you know that? Really, how do you know that? Because that's what you would do? Because that's what you think they should do? You really don't know that, do you? Stop telling me what the cat is thinking, okay? Share consciousness with the cat, and then you'll know what the cat's up to, okay? But so we personify everything. So we think that this matter has no life, right? That this is lifeless because we have this definition of life, and it's based on organics. Something that is organic, that has the ability to breathe, we consider that to be life, and all other forms, quote, of life don't exist. But what I recognize is that we are so limited in our perceptions. The consciousness that we have as human beings is not the explanation for the consciousness that everything else in the universe has. Everything has consciousness. Everything has consciousness. We're just limited in our ability to understand the consciousness of other things. And it makes a little bit of sense when you start to look at, if you look at the physics of the molecular structure of this table, what you notice is that the reason that this feels solid to us is simply because the molecules are vibrating at such rapid speeds that they give the illusion of being solid matter. But everything inside of this table is vibrating. Everything on the planet is vibrating. Everything off the planet is vibrating, right? So if I were to allow my consciousness to step out of the idea of physical science that tells me that this matter is solid and cannot be moved by me, if I step out of that limit, I could use my mind to make that table bend with me. I could put my hand through it and then pull my hand back out if I connect the consciousness with the consciousness of the table to let that happen with me. But we're so naive that we think that we are the beings, we are the life, and that the table is at our mercy to just be a solid table for all of its existence. It's not true. And the same is true with energies that are not in bodies. We have this idea that we're either a soul in a body or a soul out of a body. But it's so much more expansive than that. It's so much more expansive than that. There are so many kind of energies around that we just don't fully understand, nor do we necessarily have all of the scientific know-all or equipment to understand or record what other forms of life are or other forms of consciousness. This is just one form of consciousness. What I do understand, though, is that the human soul in the human body is on a journey to return to original consciousness. We are all sparks of original consciousness. We are all sparks of all that is. We are all sparks of existence itself. We are all sparks of this wonderful creation. And our journey as souls, whether we're in a body on the planet or we're anywhere else in any plane, our journey is to make our way back home to the center. That's what enlightenment is. An aha moment that you integrate and it becomes you and your vibration increases is you have just moved closer to remembering all that you knew before you were born. You've moved closer to the center of source. Okay? So there are vibrational energies that have achieved so much of that return to the center that they are, we can use the word angelic, that they are so high vibrational that they don't necessarily have individual agendas anymore, but they're out and about supporting and guiding us. And then there's other levels of energy and other levels of energy and other levels of energy. But all of these are here and all of these are available for us. When souls are not in bodies, they are good. Okay? The only evil exists in human form. And that's an important thing to remember about energies, because some people feel afraid, or they heard, stories about evil spirits, or they have superstition, or they're afraid of ghosts. But when you are not in a body, all of the stuff that you picked up that was negative, it melts to the earth floor when you die. And you have a very, very, very full recollection of how beautiful everything really is. And you reconnect with how whole and happy and limitless and expansive you and everything else is. So I gave kind of like a one-size-fits-all answer to this question. But the whole idea is, don't always think of everything in the universe in terms of small, limited boxes. We do tend to wrap everything up and put it in a little tiny box and then file it there. But as soon as we put it in a little tiny box and we file it there, then someone's going to come out and say, oh no, that's not so. Let me show you this. All right? Science does its best to explain things. Religion does something else to try to explain things. But neither one is fully accurate, and neither one will ever be fully accurate, because the only truth that really exists through everything is universal truth. Universal truth is something that when you know it, it feels so incontrovertible. You know it in your being, and there's nothing on earth that can be said or done or shown you that will disprove it. And that's what matters. That's what matters. And that's all centered around the vibration of love. Okay. Now it's truly after 9. Thank you for letting me stay and answer one last question. while you weren't telling me what time it was. I really appreciate you all coming out. I look forward to a great and wonderful year. As soon as I pick one of these topics, I'll put it on my website. I'll put it in my newsletter so that you know when you come back in March, on March 11th, then you'll know what topic we'll be focusing on. And of course, I'll always answer your questions for the second half. Have a good night, everybody. Thank you.